The topic of brachiation falls within the larger topic of primate evolution. Some key terms, just to review what a primate is: species of mammal emerging about 65 million years ago. Basic characteristics are larger brain, forward-facing eyes, reduced sense of smell, grasping hands or feet, nails, social grouping, and opposable thumbs. Arboreal refers to trees or species that live in trees. Quadrupedalism refers to locomotion where four limbs are used. And in contrast, brachiation or brachiator is a specialized form of locomotion by swinging through trees. So an arboreal brachiator would be a species that lives in trees and gets around by swinging on the branches. Full brachiation only uses arms, and semi-brachiation uses the addition of a tail or a hind limb. These are some examples to visualize what we're talking about. You can see on the right, the spider monkey and the langur have those long tails that they do use for locomotion, so they would be considered semi-brachiators. And here is a review of the primate taxonomy. All the way on the left, we have the primate common ancestor, which we talked about was a small nocturnal tree shrew. It goes into the prosimians or the strepsirrhines, and then the anthropoids, which are the hapsirrhines. And you can see this is about 65 million years ago. On the right, it delineates into apes and then all the way into humans, just so we can keep this all relative. So why live in trees? The arboreal theory says that primate characteristics are the result of moving into and adapting to an arboreal environment. So this basically says that primates went into trees and then through natural selection got characteristics that helped them live in trees. And then the visual predation theory kind of says the same thing, but it gives a reason. Characteristics that are well suited to trees and visual features are adaptations to increase successful predation. So basically, it's a lot easier to see prey if you're up in the trees rather than on the ground. So, discussion. Think of the anatomical adaptations needed for swinging versus walking. So this relates to the arboreal theory. How would the population select for traits that would improve survival in trees rather than on the ground? And what senses would an arboreal primate rely mostly on? So we know primates already have a reduced sense of smell, and they rely more on sight, with the forward-facing eyes, color vision, depth perception, and touch, rather than smell like the nocturnal ancestors. So this is what we are comparing brachiators to. On the left, we have a terrestrial quadruped, and on the right is much farther in the future, about 6 million years ago, we see bipedalism, but you can see how the skeletons are different. This is a generic brachiator. We can see that this one doesn't have a tail, but sometimes they would. So if you look at this, you can see some unique defining characteristics in the skeleton that gives them the advantage of swinging through trees. We have the dorsal spinal cord, as opposed to the lateral spinal cord in the quadruped or the anterior spinal cord in the biped. Long arms, of course, for reaching. Rotating wrist joints to make them more mobile. Motile shoulders and hip joints. We see more mobility in the ball joints or the pendulum balls, with shoulders and hip joints in brachiators than we do in the quadrupeds. And then curved phalanges, also long phalanges, metacarpals, and metatarsals, for grasping, a wide sternum. And brachiators actually have one extra cervical vertebrae and one less lumbar vertebrae than the terrestrial quadruped.